Honorable President, Vice President, Honorary Secretary, Honorary Treasurer, and all the respected committee members of Malaysian Association of Education in Medical and Health Sciences for giving me this opportunity. And I'm privileged for having the opportunity to share our humble contribution in the research through this very prestigious and well-known forum. Basically, this published work is part of larger project. We have published this work in BMC Medical Education in 2022 February. And I very much believe that no one would agree that publishing is an essential part of academic or scholarly work, because publications provide opportunities for feedback on the research. And fortunately and luckily, I was encouraged by my main supervisor, Associate Professor Dr. Saiful Bari, to publish our work. And I really received expert and kind guidance and continuous support from him in doing so. I firmly believe that the title of our research work is worth having a space of one full slide. As a matter of fact, it is the first introduction which our audience have towards the proceeding work. Therefore, we selected a title that, in our opinion, grabs attention, accurately describes the contents of the work done, and makes people or our audience want to know further. Looking at the slide, we can easily identify as what is conveyed as the main topic of the study. Here we can observe that main areas highlighted here are effective coping strategies, medical students, mental health disorders, undergraduate medical education, and all this related work associated with these main areas was carried out by conducting a scoping review. This slide here is significant because to have a starter for the expert as well as for the beginners, it's a chance to refresh and recall our memory pertaining to the terminologies with concise definitions, as we will have to come across with these particular terminologies very frequently in next various sections of today's presentation. Coping being one of the most important topic, comprising strategies which are utilized for confronting mental health disorders. Second area of our concern was the medical students, and we can see in the literature it supports the importance of equipping them with coping abilities, which shall enable them to survive well during challenging times, especially in a world where a wide range of mental health disorders are predominantly prevalent. Last but not the least, we have addressed all the above stated research domains, specifically in the context of medicine, considering it to be very, very demanding professional course. Here, demanding is in terms of physical as well as mental demands on the part of undergraduate medical students. I do believe, and I would say that no one or majority of us would agree, no one would disagree that these three questions, what, why, and how, they are really very important questions for any researcher, and they work as a best friend of every researcher. They help them in knowing the answer and help and getting to know to these answers to these questions would definitely enable us or anybody else to be more engaged and show more initiative and have a greater understanding of anyone's goal towards the research. Let's together know from the next slide as getting the answer to these particular questions would lead us towards our aim, and we are going to show you how we have attempted to get answers in terms of the gap in the research or the methods we employ to explore our main topics. Here we can see the word what signifies for aim and why indicates for gap, and at the same time how implies for the methods used in our work. During the research work, our target remained explicitly very clear, as we specifically aim to ascertain the frequently occurring coping strategies world over and also their effect on mental health disorders. The reason we were inclined towards this particular area or subject was the shortage of the available research. Once we were certain about the importance of our work and we have articulated our aims, now it was time for us to have a strategy which could lead us to our aims. Therefore, conducting a scoping review was considered the best method. And this is actually started with searching available literature from 1st January 1986 to 31st March 2021. With the help of relevant search terms, utilizing the popular search engines of Google Scholar, PubMed, and Scopus. The reason for carrying out a scoping review is described in the next slide. According to the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, by the way, there are many definitions which significantly been utilized in the literature pertaining to scoping review. Here we see what Canadian Institutes of Health Research has to say. They say that scoping reviews or studies may be defined as exploratory projects that systematically map the literature available on a particular topic, and identifying key concepts, theories, sources of evidences, and gaps in the research. So this way, we arrived at the decision to conduct a scoping review. Aligned with the aim of our research, that is to identify effective coping strategies for mental health disorders, was in itself a huge and heterogeneous body of literature whose conceptual boundaries were yet to be clarified. Hence, we opted for a scoping review. Once we had decided to conduct a scoping review, we get to know that although the scoping review has become an increasingly popular approach in recent times for synthesizing research evidences, it is still relatively a new approach for which a universally accepted definition or a definitive procedure has not yet been established. Fortunately, we found that there were methodological frameworks by experts in the fields like Aksi and O'Malley. So we selected their methodological framework to conduct our scoping review. Before we start explaining the research steps described by methodological framework presented by Aksi and O'Malley, first we look at how our particular work, this work, matched the 4 reasons provided by Aksi and O'Malley again for conducting any scoping review. Reasons they have posed were like reason number 1 is to examine the state of research activity on a selected topic. So we aimed at finding frequently occurring coping strategies world over and frequently highlighted in the literature across the globe. Second reason, as we can see it here, is before a full systematic review. So this also matches with our future perspective as we intend to carry out a full systematic review in near future. Third reason by them was synthesize and share such findings. And I believe that everybody would agree that our scoping review and anybody else work in research one day, today, in near future or later on has to be disseminated and being discussed and taught and talked in various fora and people really get engaged with it and people really get advantage of the findings that anybody else in the past has done. And one more reason, that is the highlight key gaps in the literature. We found that there were very limited search that has been done to explore the common coping strategies utilized by medical students at especially at undergraduate medical education level. Aksi and O'Malley, as we already have discussed, they have provided explicit step-by-step guidance in the form of methodological framework for scoping reviews, for conducting of scoping reviews. In this slide, we explain with examples, with real examples from our personal experience as what did we do at every stage. We can see that stage number 1 concerns actually experiences. Stage number 1 actually concerns the issues in which the research is to be taken place. So therefore, the research question for our scoping review was, what are common coping strategies used by medical students in undergraduate medical education? For identifying relevant studies, we employed a 3-step search. First, a primary search through Google Scholar, PubMed, and Scopus commenced in April 2021, and we conducted an evaluation of the content within the title and abstract and of the index term as well, used to assign related articles. Secondly, a search employing all the established keywords and index terms was also commenced within the databases stated above. Third, the reference list of participating studies was investigated for further studies. And for study selection, the articles directly matching or similar to our mentioned keywords were recognized. Three-stage screening: title, abstract, and for full text was carried out. Moreover, the full content was looked at to determine fitness for inclusion. At this particular stage, the collection method of full text articles was accomplished by two researchers. A third researcher was always available to fix differences of opinion if found any. Fortunately, there wasn't any. And for charting the data, at this stage, uh, basically we developed an initial, or you may call it a provisional form to tabulate the relevant data from the included studies. Initially, randomly chosen articles were individually studied by two researchers who drafted the data extraction form to ensure that their tactic for data extraction is constantly reliable and consistent with the research question. The final form involved headings such as study features, for example, year of publication and relevant research focus areas, and for collecting and summarizing and reporting the result, the most important part of our research, being very challenging as well. We were able to recognize thematic categories of the literature involving various segments comprising methods, evidence, defining results, and implications. Once all the data were assembled and some opening information had been recognized, a detailed meeting between the researchers or the authors was held to discuss the data analysis strategy, interpretation, discussion, and writing of this manuscript for publication. Mainly, data analysis involved qualitative thematic analysis, and stage 6, as mentioned here, is for consultation, which, according to Arksy and O'Malley, is an optional stage, and for our particular work, we did not opt for it. With these explicit inclusion criteria, we were able to determine our scope of document inclusion with three different steps. We started with title suitability. Next step was about abstract suitability, and final step we carried out was about full text suitability. So as not to miss any pertinent research, we applied generally a well-defined heading terms in the search. And finally, we conducted various test searches to refine and improve the search terms. The articles we searched were yielded using medical subject headings mesh. On the right-hand side, it is shown that our initial search yielded a very large or extremely huge number of documents. Actually, with the passing time, with our screening process, with our multiple steps involved, we were able to further refine. And at last, we get fewer, but the most important studies to be included in our actual scoping review. At this particular stage, Prisma flow diagram came in very handy. Prisma stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. Kindly find link for Prisma if anybody requires in the reference list at the end of today's presentation. Our included studies were of various types, and all the initially obtained articles, as the number was 2,134, these all were reviewed for their titles, abstracts in full length, and basically 24 documents were finally included in our scoping review. These finally included articles were from 14 countries, and the global distribution you can see on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, there is an illustration of the procedure we opted actually to get the extract of the final document. That was a very, very challenging part of our work. And we utilized a thematic analysis. We looked for patterns in data that can be used to shed light on our research. Analysis was different in different stages, which we are going to see in the next slide. With thematic analysis approach, we look for patterns, as we already discussed. And it really has given us data that can be used to shed light on in our research. Analysis basically was conducted in six different steps. During step number 1, we read and reread the text from the available studies. And here, jotting down early impressions was really very beneficial. And during step number 2, we were able to organize data in a systematic manner. Every line of text was not coded actually. As a result, we coded any data segment that was only relevant towards such question. This step reduced a significant amount of data and transformed it into a manageable part of information that was very much relevant to the needed perspective and research questions. While working on step number 3, there we were able to find the most frequent quotes without losing any meaningful data. This also again helped us capture significant concerns. Further developing into prominent categories, and while arriving at step number 4, we were able to ascertain which categories were related to each other. And next step, we had the most significant themes in hand. And at this particular crucial stage, with an order of occurrence and representation and for extracted information from all included studies. The significance was actually based on their representation concerning the research question. At step, that was the sixth step, we found a fitting answer now to our research question in the form of extracted points. And that was related with our two main themes. Number one, mental health disorder, and the other was coping strategies. These two themes embody or encompass the most discussed issues about psychological morbidity with coping in the undergraduate medical educational context, basically within the published literature. This slide here actually portrays various inventories and surveys and scales that have been utilized and been utilized by the document that we had included in our scoping review. We can see that multiple surveys and scales were utilized, but actually because this was not our main or minor object to determine the frequency of the multiple surveys, so we didn't write much in detail about this particular area in our paper. Next slide is very important, and we can see the most effective coping strategies, so positive as well as the negatives, are being shown here with relation to the geographical locations. Striking or alarming, if we can say, is the finding that students were utilizing the negative coping strategies as much as they had been utilizing positive coping strategies. Despite the huge or substantial body of research demonstrating, go back to the slide. Yeah. So here we can see that the theme number 1, which we have already mentioned, was mental health disorder, was yielding stress, depression, anxiety, and burnout. And on the other hand, we had another theme that was the coping strategies, and there we got support, active coping, acceptance, avoidance, denial, substance abuse, faith, religion, sports, and miscellaneous also. At the same time, this also reflects the previous slide where we have seen that students were found to utilize negative coping strategies as frequently as similarly as positive coping strategies. There has been a substantial body of research and which actually displays or demonstrates a very healthy or positive relationship between support and happiness. Yet we still know very little about the mechanism actually, no? What is the mechanism by which support influencing psychological and physical health. So we believe that more attention should be given to those who are, if you may call them, disabled by drug abuse, as utilizing their negative coping strategies, or with any mental illness or mental health disorder, and there is a need of renewed efforts to emphasize the prevention of such mishaps, and there has to be made some early diagnosis. So according to our findings, Health support programs and proper guidance on using effective and positive coping strategies will improve undergraduate medical students' psychological resilience. However, we believe that in near future, a meta-analysis is really needed to shed some more light on this particular topic. In our study, we have used a very well-known approach as a methodological framework for scoping several articles to synthesize the available data, and we have successfully done so. And we were able to publish our article. And at the same time, we had some more strengths in our research work. For instance, we had 2 reviewers at every level. And utilizing more than one database really given us evidence for our studies meticulousness. These we consider as a strength of our body. Nevertheless, we cite here in the limitations of our study. Firstly, only English language research articles were reviewed. So because coping has now grown as a universally popular domain for researchers worldwide, there might be some more relevant studies in the languages other than English. Secondly, despite the extensive search approach we have employed and the inclusion criteria we have opted for, we did not find many studies from Middle Eastern or Southeast Asian countries. This may also be linked to English being not the first language in those particular countries. Data was made available within the published article in the journal. I must say this work is undoubtedly a genuine teamwork, and a huge and substantial contribution was made by all authors. We wish to extend our profound thanks to the University of Science Malaysia for the research grant, which was a great help indeed. To conclude, we conclude that undergraduate medical students worldwide experience a wide range of mental health disorders. And during such challenging times, they try a variety of coping strategies, as been shown in our previous slides. The most common, as we found, was support seeking, and then active coping, acceptance, avoidance, substance abuse, religious coping, and sports engagement. It is still important to emphasize that aside from educating medical students in their professional medical courses, their quality of life during their medical training must also be considered carefully and seriously. Therefore, teaching medical students how to deal with adversity in their difficult times is very crucial, is very critical. Individual and administrative involvement is again very essential for preventing mental health disorders among our medical students. Next slide is for the references, and with this slide we end our today's presentation, and I hope you all must have enjoyed it. And if you have anything to further discuss or related to our work, you all are more than welcome. And once again, thank you so much. Terima kasih.